Hello and welcome. This is Let's Talk About Conflict, and I'm your host, Lynn Nash. I'm an attorney mediator here in Dallas, Texas, and joining me today is my good friend, Andy Jones. There he is. Today, we're going to talk about internal conflict and some different ways to work on it, utilizing the formula identified in a book called Positive Intelligence. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that I'm holding the book up. And if you're not, it's a book. Hey, Positive Intelligence. So Andy, let's talk about you for a minute. You're a personal injury trial lawyer here in Dallas. And I know that when you're not serving the public as an EMT or training and running half marathons, or is there a black belt in there somewhere too? I mean, yeah, okay.
There's a black belt and a brown one too. We're working on that one.
Okay, there you go. I once again, audience, bring you a friend of mine who is a Longhorn, loud and proud Longhorn. Seriously,
That's right.
I live to embrace conflict because of all these friends who are literally the opposite of me in the college football world. But anyway, Andy, tell us a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more on what's going on with you and how you know me. That might be dangerous.
Well, I just super appreciate you having me on the program, Lynn. This is an honor. I've listened to all of them. I really appreciate what you're doing in this space. My favorite part about knowing you is that we got to know each other through musical theater, through the Bar None show here in Dallas. And from the moment you and I were put together, everyone knew. We were in one scene. It was one scene, and everyone knew that Andy and Lynn had to go together because they brought the same energy and could work as partners. So then we've been doing this for years now, and there's always the Andy and Lynn number because we know Andy and Lynn are going to put on a good show because Andy and Lynn work so well together. And so I've enjoyed that. I've loved meeting your family through that. Even you taking me and my wife out to dinner before the birth of our first kid and giving us that wonderful basket that fuzzy blanket was the blanket that we brought Julia home in. So you have done so many wonderful things. But for a moment, if I could remind the audience that I am indeed a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer here in Dallas. 70% medical malpractice, 30% catastrophic injury. I am honored to work not only here in Texas, but I have a national product liability practice. I go all over the state, and I'm really proud of the work we do. I think I put it best on LinkedIn when I say I'm a passionate courtroom advocate for the injured and the lost.
Good. Elevator speed. Good job. I love it.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so you are on with me today on the pod because we were having a conversation 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, along the lines, kind of a catch up.
Yeah.
Your life, how things going? And you asked me if I knew the book Positive Intelligence, right?
Yeah. It was something I was turned on to, I think, a year or two ago. I was working with a coach and they brought it up, and I read through it and I was like, oh my gosh, this answers a lot of questions and helped me develop a lot of thought processes that were really helped me get some things straight.
Cool. Okay, now here we are. We're talking about it, right?
Right.
So I asked Andy to come on with me, not necessarily as an attorney, although we both fall into certain categories that may look very reflective of many attorneys, as Andy laughs. Yes, because it's real. And we're gonna share with y'all some of the things that we recognize about ourselves looking at this, and maybe I'm gonna share at least one ugly story about myself, in how I recognize some of these things, and then we'll go on and see what else makes sense beyond the positive intelligence. So primary number one, what is positive intelligence, or PQ? So people have heard of IQ, they've heard of EQ. Okay, most people know IQ. EQ is emotional intelligence. Yes, that's an I and not a Q. For whatever reason we use Q, I don't know. Maybe I should have looked that up. That would have been smart. But
I think it means quotient, but I'm not really sure.
Okay, well, you went to Texas, so okay, fill it in. It's good.
Go Varsity.
So PQ, Positive Intelligence, this book, Positive Intelligence, is a New York Times bestseller. The author is Shirzad Chamine, and if I butchered that, forgive me in advance. I'm not trying to do it any injustice, but this wonderful man put this book together, and positive intelligence measures the relative strength of the two modes in your mind: high or low positive intelligence, high or low PQ. So ultimately, PQ is an indication of the control you have over your own mind and how well our own minds act in our own best interest. And that's the piece, Andy, that you brought this up to me about, because we were kind of going through the whole, well, I'm working on me. I'm working on me. And we were talking about the podcast and talking about conflict.
Yeah.
This book is really about those internal conflicts that your own brain is doing, right?
Well, and your own brain is creating the conflict.
Yeah.
It's using your life experiences, both past and present, and it's running it through all of these filters we're going to talk about in a minute. But this is you are creating your own conflict. So how do you solve your own internal conflict when you are the one creating the conflict?
The eternal question. No, but it's great. And the author goes on to give you some tools. Okay. So Andy and I talked about this before we got on the recording. And I'll be honest, some of this got a little hippie for me. I was just like, no, I don't know. I mean, I love social science and I'm definitely a social science person, but a couple of these things maybe were outside of my yeah, I can do that, or yeah, I can't do that. Now, that's just the gospel according to Lynn. It does not mean this isn't great for everybody else on the planet. I'm just being completely brutally honest.
Well, it's like all things. It's like every personality test you take. You've got to take some and leave the rest. I mean, I remember reading the Enneagram and I thought at the end of the book, we were all going to be all the numbers, because I thought, oh, I'm like this, I'm like that, I'm like this. And at the end, it would reveal we're all the same. It's also why on BuzzFeed, I really don't think that my spirit animal is a butterfly, but apparently BuzzFeed thinks it is. And ironically, my wife came out as a bear. So it's always cute when she texts me, hey, butterfly. And I'm like, hey, bear. And, you know, shouldn't those roles really be reversed?
No, knowing both of you, no, actually, I accept that right where it is, but I won't elaborate. Which shout out to Andy's wife, because she's amazing. So, okay, back to this book. The author goes on to say there's one primary voice going all the time called the judge, and that the judge is doing exactly what you think. Now, it's kind of funny to have two lawyers on here kind of talking about a book with the judge.
I know. It's like, which judge am I picturing today? What, which bench is that person on?
Yeah, I've had different faces go across my brain with that term as I read this book. But so you've always got the judge, and then the judge leans into these 9 saboteurs, right? Isn't that just kind of like Mufasa? Saboteurs. I mean, it's just kind of, ooh, right? And the author has listed the saboteurs as an avoider, a controller, a hyperachiever, a hyper rationale, a hyper vigilant, a pleaser, restless, stickler, or victim. That those are the 9. Those are the categories that the author has identified to be these saboteurs that work in tandem with the judge, making noise in your head, making problems for you in your head. Back to what Andy already said beautifully, we're causing our own conflict against ourselves, right?
Right.
Me, myself, and Irene, right? The conversation that goes on in your head. So having that little bit of knowledge, Andy kind of said, hey, look in this PQ thing. So I did. And there's a test you can take online. Again, we are in no way being given money for this. And if the author thinks we're totally off base, we apologize in advance. But you can go to positiveintelligence.com and take the test to see what your personal saboteurs are. And so Andy has done his, and I have done mine, and I will not make you go first. I will share mine.
Hey, I'm happy to share. It would feed my saboteur.
I know, we're working on it. And so the online test for me, my highest saboteur at an 8.8 is the controller. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I want to make sure it gets done the way I want to make sure it gets done right, which by the way means the way I think it ought to be done. And so
100%.
Yeah, I'm owning that. That's the controller for sure. And then the next 2 are exactly the same scoring. And I think it's really the top 3 that you need to hyper focus. You need to zone in on to say, these are the things I need to watch out for when I'm processing. And so the next two down for me at 8.1 each are restless and hyperachiever. And I was a little surprised, honestly,
Really?
about hyperachiever hitting that, because and we've had this conversation about the whole imposter syndrome thing. So I don't necessarily feel like I'm a hyperachiever. I think people watching me would see that in myself more than I see it in me.
I was shocked to find it was not your number one.
Okay. That means my control thing is super sneaky.
You're like the Green Beret of control.
That's right. You were in charge. I wasn't in charge. I just thought, just got you to say everything I wanted you to say. No, it's not control at all. No, but those are the big ones. And then for me at a 6.9, which is not too far down on my number 4, is pleaser. And I come from a family situation and a generational situation where I just think that was kind of built in. And I don't want to say anything negative about that one way or another, because I just think that's part of living and part of
Absolutely.
the journey in my life. But I find myself tripping. All of a sudden I'm in all this frenzy into that restlessness of trying to make everybody happy and trying to fix it all. And I'm like, wait, what? And I have to pull back and have a conversation with myself about it. So those are mine. Really was a little surprised. It's funny. I thought I wouldn't have been surprised if pleaser was a little bit higher, but I guess I've worked on that. Because the older I get, I'm like, no, maybe not.
And I think that that's true. I think the pleaser element, and because if I can share mine,
Please. Please. That's the point.
So what was exciting about the fact that I had done this and that you had done this and we had shared is that we're actually almost the same. But my number one saboteur is actually a hyperachiever. And because I'm a hyperachiever, the test goes on a scale from 0 to 10. I got a perfect 10 in hyperachieving. Thank you. Thank you. That fills the void. But then my second and third were tied at 8.1, both of them, which was restless and then hypervigilant. But also number 4 was pleaser.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll talk more about the top 3, but as far as why pleaser kind of fits in that space is, I think that when you kind of assess pleaser, there is the balance between 1, how old you are, your life experience, but 2, I'm responsible for children. You're responsible for children. You have a spouse. I have a spouse. You have a business to run. I have a business to run. There are things to take care of. And so what a test on the internet may see as pleasing, we may see as, I just got to take care of these things.
Right.
I got to make sure they get done. I got to take care of these people.
And if they don't feel that they are being taken care of, they're probably going to blow up my world and make it all harder.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or is that just me? I mean, I'm like, oh God, please don't blow up. I don't
Well,
have.
you know how in some cultures, wedding vows, they say, and you will lovingly accept children into your marriage. I always say you will lovingly accept chaos into your marriage. So children are chaos, but we love them anyway, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you can't, we were just laughing about our kids before we got on talking about, you can board a dog. How can you kids for vacation? Come on. And I have to say, all of my children are above the age of majority. I did not start this podcast until they were above the age of majority, because for me, I knew I was going to share a lot about my life, and I needed to make sure that they were at a different place. You're coming on to talk about yourself. It's a very different thing.
I need to do the disclaimer that I do before I do any CLE, which is the opinions I express are my own. They don't reflect that my employer, the state bar, my wife, my mother, my children, anybody I'm associated with. Unless you like them, then they can be endorsed by the people that like them.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's a well done. And my disclaimer is loud and proud on everything else. So yeah, this is not legal advice. We're talking about ourselves. And we
That one too.
Yeah. Not proud, buddy. I promise you, I got us both covered. But the point being is that this element in you and in me that's very high is that hyperachiever. And we were kind of laughing about, and you said it really kindly. You said, can anybody go to grad school that's not a hyperachiever? Like, are they going to put in what it takes to pull that off? I like looking at, I have met some people in grad school that I thought weren't necessarily high achievers, and I'm grading stuff for grad school now, and I'm like, nope, some of those people do not care. But I do think professional schools,
Yeah.
where there's a license involved and there's that test coming at the end, it's way more than just the degree. You got to do the degree, and then you got to do this test, you got to do this test and this test. I think those are all, the joke about type A personality, but maybe in utilizing the positive, the PQ element, maybe instead of type A, you just say hyperachiever.
Well, and in putting it into context, what we talked about is that it was kind of in the context of why I'm a lawyer or went to law school or whatever. I don't think I specifically became the kind of lawyer I am because I'm a hyperachiever, but the fact that I went to law school because my hyperachieving orientation was after high school, there was college, hyperachieve in college, and then there is something after. There must be something after. So go get the thing that's after, achieve it, hyperachieve there. Okay, after that, what's after that? What's after that? And it's that then is then fed by the second saboteur, which is restless, which I say is the gasoline for the hyperachieving engine.
Yeah, and I have to say so, and I think I've said this before on this podcast, so forgive me if I repeat, but my master's kind of rebooted me into a profession and kind of set me on this path. And then I knew I wasn't finished. I just had the sense at the end of that degree I wasn't finished. But when I finished my undergrad the first time, I was like, thank God, I am never going to school again. I am never ha 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 ha, never say never. And so there are different times in your life where those things, you see them so differently. And the wind in your sails comes because now is the right opportunity, is the right time. Kind of learning to hear those ons and offs in your own life, in your own head, which is what we're talking about. All those things are going off in your own head. The judge, when they're telling you what you can and can't do, or what if you fail, what's going to happen, and then connecting to the saboteurs. So I have a story. A little story.
Please share.
So my number one saboteur. Now, I did not get a perfect 10 like Andy. I got an 8.8. So my gymnastics, I only got an 8.8 on the balance beam. So I got an 8.8 in controller. Okay. And so I know it's like the Hulk comes out in me when
good reference.
Right? And like, right, it happens and there's no going back. It's going to take a minute more to wear off. And so a couple of weeks ago, I had been out of town for work. I got back in town. I had to go out of town again for work. I got back in town. I had so much on my plate. I wasn't getting any sleep. I was half sick at the time. And I had already, in the week or two before, tried to put the clothes together for the baby boy's senior photo shoot. Okay. First of all, we're doing senior pictures this late in the year. It's really bad. We are behind. We're behind on everything. And like, yeah, my
hashtag working mom life.
No joke, but my hyperachiever is not feeling very achievement, right? We can't mess this up. We got to get this done. And so I had this pile of clothes. And then when we did the pile of clothes the first time, which was like pulling teeth, I said, he's doing laundry. And so when laundry comes to you, I'll take the pants and I'll put them over there. So they'll all be there together. Okay. So it is now out of my control, right? So I'm in and out of town. I'm doing all these things. It is Saturday morning after I've had no sleep, no break, no rest. We are up at 7 a.m. because we got to be there by 8 a.m. And I get up and I'm looking through the pile and I'm like, where are the pants? Where are the pants? And my sweet darling husband walks through and goes, what are you talking about? I said, where are the pants? When the laundry was being done, the pants were supposed to be here. He said, well, I asked him 3 times if it was ready. And he said, yes. I said, you couldn't look through this pile like I'm looking through this pile?
Oh, no.
Pants? Yes, see the green monsters go, the Hulk is happening. And then I am gone. Get out of my way. Just go where I tell you to do what I tell you to do. I don't have time. Whatever you say does not matter. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. I'm in full control mode. We get to where we have to be by 8 a.m. and hand over the 18-year-old to the photographer. and Steve and I are walking and I'm trying to calm down. I'm trying to. And we already had started this book. I'm aware of what is happening to me, but I I am still working on how to pull myself back. And I mean, it was to tears. I was like, I'm so exhausted. And when I look down and I feel like nobody is picking up the slack. And he is so, you know him, Andy, and Steve is so calm.
He is a wonderful dude.
He's a great guy and he's so calm. And he said, I am sorry that I didn't look through that, but it is not the end of the world. It all got done and you got to let it go. Right. And he said it with a lot of honesty and generosity to me after having been the Hulk at him. But after reading this book and being able to just honestly say, this is what set me off. This is why I'm here in this mode. And I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that. So can you help me? Help me. Cause I cannot be everywhere, do everything, even though I have a high pleaser and I try. So that's kind of my story of having read this book and having recognized patterns.
What I hear from that story also speaks to the nature of the saboteur.
Yeah.
Because you created conflict in your life with your controlling saboteur, and you created conflict with your husband, with your child. I'm sure you weren't the nicest to the photographer, and driving over there, I'm sure you probably were not the nicest to the people in the road. Your saboteur created conflict, your own mind. Now, granted, the kid didn't wash the pants. Got that. That was the stimulus, and that was true. That was, oh God, that was a real thing. But your brain created the conflict. So when we look back at the theme of this internal conflict, you also have to look at the nature of the saboteur.
Yeah.
Because hyperachieving, I have noticed throughout my life that hyperachieving actually creates a different kind of conflict. One of my better examples is I did not get into law school on the first try anywhere. I know. I literally have a text message from my friend who was a Brooklyn prosecutor, and now she works for, I think, the AG's office in Austin. She says, she texted me and she says, I don't know what happened, and I'm so sorry for you. I'm like, oh my God, the whole world expected me because of my achieverness, because of who I am, and then it didn't happen. Luckily, Baylor let me in as a spring admission, not for the fall, at the spring. You know, I was on a wait list for a school in my hometown, and my pride got in the way, and I said, well, if you don't want me on the first try, I don't want you. Those are all other parts of my saboteur. But what that scenario created was I had a whole semester of nothing.
Oh.
I graduated top of my class, student government, president of this, king of that. In 1 week, I asked my wife to marry me, met President Obama, and graduated. That was the best week of my life. Okay?
And then
nothing.
Oh.
Because I wasn't like all my other friends who were going to find apartments and getting ready to go to law school. I had been talked down of my restlessness saboteur was then casting about for things to do, and I had been talked out of it until it ended up my wife and I had been long distance for most of college. She said, just come live with me, spend the semester with me. And you know what, in that moment when I said yes, I realized that was probably the right thing to do. The problem was, it was while she was going to Yale for her master's degree, a school that also did not accept me twice. And so I get up there and I'm like, okay, I could pick up the achievingness. I could pick that up. Okay, I'll get a job. Okay, I got a job parking cars at a hotel. And that did not fill the achieverness. And then what spiraled from there was, because I was not hyperachieving, I became sad. I became angry. I became disengaged. I became unpleasant. All of the negative aspects in my life came out, and that created conflict with my then fiance, now wife, with some of the friends we had, some of my relationships at home, some of the choices to not do or do things, because I felt like I had the huge blow to my pride, the exile, the inability to feed the achieve, especially on Yale Law School reunion, where I am parking their cars on that weekend. All of this was just beating up on my hyperachievingness. And so I decided to withdraw, be angry, depressed.
And then,
Well, and then the last week before I went up to Baylor, I realized, holy crap, I should have enjoyed this the whole time. Because now here, 16 years later, I'm sitting here thinking, man, wouldn't it be great to go to the Irish pub on a Tuesday?
right?
You know, wouldn't it be great to be able to not have children wake you up in the middle of the night to do something? Wouldn't it be great to not have to worry about, are we going to make our number this month at the business? That was the best semester of my life.
But we don't know what we don't know until we know, right?
And that's why hindsight is miserable, and something I frequently engage in only to it's like it just hurts, but you do it anyway. It's the car wreck you can't look away from.
We talked about you have to sit in the suck. You
Yeah,
just have to go sit in the suck. And
absolutely.
I think the suck is it's okay. So this book, I'm gonna circle back here. I'm gonna stay on
Yeah.
top. PQ, because controllers, yeah. Okay. So PQ, in this book, Positive Intelligence, they say you want to move from the judge and the saboteurs into a PQ mindset. And to do that is to engage your stage. Okay, this is where you start losing me because it gets a little hippie.
The
Yes,
sage.
stage. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And I get it like through history and time and Morty. I don't care. It's a little hippie. So to engage the stage, gospel according to Lynn, the stage mindset utilizes 5 stage powers. Stage powers. Okay, empathy.
Captain Planet. Okay.
I know it's there though. You feel it. I'm just like,
Absolutely.
okay. The stage powers are empathy, exploration, innovation, navigation, and activation. And I have to tell you, kind of as a social science conflict person, I agree with that 100%. If you can get those pieces of your brain firing when you are feeling in conflict, you can get yourself settled down to start actually solving conflict. So I don't think that this book is really written with the term conflict in mind.
Sure.
But when you're talking about inner conflict and the things that are keeping you from working at your highest level or being in the zone where you are in a positive place and moving forward in a positive way, then these 5 things really are very similar to what we talk about in conflict skills.
Okay.
So, I want to list these really quickly, and then I want you and I to kind of bounce around this a little bit and talk about times when this has worked, or you've recognized any of this in your own experiences. So the book encourages us to use empathy when strong feelings are involved or emotional reserves are running low. So that would be my husband, when I was, in tears about losing it. Very empathetic. Love that man. To use an explore mindset when an explore, I hate this word power, I just don't do it well. Okay, to use this intention of being
It's not serving you very well, Lynn. That's another phrase I hate, serving you.
This doesn't rest with me. I don't know how to say. This means very brilliant, and I'm in no way trying to delineate that. Okay, to explore when we need to discover more about what's going on, or if we're in a place where we're trying to act on limited information, instead of choosing to accept limited information, take an exploration mindset. To be innovative when the obvious or existing ideas are not enough. So we've got to get outside the box, got to find creative solutions. To navigate, which I thought this was kind of an interesting concept. This gets a little hippie, but it is an interesting concept. To navigate, use that power when you need to find alignment with deeper values, purpose, or meaning. And activates, like when you need to move forward, take action, and don't let your judge saboteurs keep you from that forward motion. The activate, we were talking on the pod recently about everybody falls. Falling is a problem. You know how to fall. You already know how to fall and recover. You learned how to walk. It is a controlled fall forward. So that activate is that sense of saying, I'm going to take action without somebody saying, oh, but if I fall, I won't be, everything's going to run or this or that or the other. That's the saboteur influence. So which one of these like immediately is a jump out to you with this is where I've seen this in my own life?
So I'm going to say exploration, and then I'm going to dodge the question real quick, because one of the things I can't remember which category it falls into. It's not related to this in that it's the love languages book.
Yeah.
My love languages are touch and words of affirmation.
Okay.
And so I don't know if it's explore or activate or whichever one it is, but the one where the author is talking about how you want to feel immediately, try and feel connected immediately to something in your environment. And he says, if it's as simple as just rubbing your fingers together and feeling the ridges on your fingers.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Works every time for me. And I think that's because touch is my love language.
Cool.
Also, because whenever it hits me, I'm never in a space where I can like grind my feet into the floor or rub the carpet or touch, like, oh, that's sticky because the kids touched it, or oh, I don't want, but rubbing my fingers together and just feeling the contours invariably always brings me back to focus. And for some reason, just always makes me smile.
Good.
I don't know what that is. And so I think that might be the action. Explore also. So the explore monologue here is that explore is something that I mostly do as a hyperachiever. I do it internally. Why am I restless? Why am I feeling underachieved? And then that leads me to ultimately will always lead me back to restlessness or a feeling I need to work out. And then I would activate by, I'm a verbal processor, so we got to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, it's not done. It hasn't come out of my head. And so I will ruminate it all day long until we talk about it. And so the play between exploration of the hyperachiever pushes me to verbally process, which is good.
Yeah.
The finger thing. But then the other part about it is I try to address insufficiencies in the conflict that hyperachievement creates. I often try to fix with restlessness, which is a saboteur and not one of these actions.
The stages, yeah.
And that leads into what I affectionately call the circle of suck, which is you're restless, you try and hyperachieve, you poorly hyperachieve or do something wrong, gets you back to recklessness, and then that ultimately lands with the withdrawal we talked about earlier. And so that's why exploration, verbal processing, and then to activate with the weird finger thing is the best way I can handle these saboteurs.
I have to, so with my control, I need empathy, but I need to give empathy, right?
Okay.
I have to switch into, it's not just about me and what I need. I have to recognize, and not in a pleasing way, but in a recognition of, here was the problem. Here was my reaction. No, my reaction was not appropriate. I recognize that, and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. And I really am sorry. And I need to meet you, who I have been a turd to through this whole experience, and say, I'm really sorry. But I also really, really, really need that activation back of the words. I am really sorry I didn't get that part of it done. I'm sorry that made you feel that way. Okay, I just need to know we're on the same page. So 26 years of marriage later, we have this great way of like laughing about a lot. And
That's so healthy.
It's not perfect. We don't have a perfect marriage and we don't have a perfect relationship, but we have a perfectly well-rounded way of saying, yeah, Steve popped off at me for something at dinner and the other night, and the people who were with us got up from the table, and I turned to him and I said, well, is there anything else about my life you'd like to correct? Well, no one else is here.
No.
Oh, I did, with just the two of us. And he looked at me and he said, that was a really heavy-handed, and I'm sorry. I was like, okay, just asking. I mean, you're going to keep going. Let's do it now. Like, here we are. It's just us. and it's no different than me being the control freak and saying "Rah, rah, 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 rah," to him. Yeah, okay. Hey, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't want to be like this either. I'm at the end of my rope, right? That when emotional reserves are running low. I mean, I was
Yeah.
but I kind of like this navigate concept about looking to align with this deeper values, purpose, and meaning. You and I were talking about this before when we had this conversation about the book originally. And I hit a place in my life where I felt like I was giving out all this energy and I was just scattershot everywhere. And nice things were happening, but I wasn't feeling consistency in my
Yeah.
personal life. I mean, my personal life is usually pretty steady, but in my professional life, I'll say it
Yeah.
that way. And so what I finally put into place in 23, and I did an assessment of everything I was involved in. It was over the top because we're hyperachiever, restless type people, and we like I'm red badge of courage right here. So I said it's got to hit one of these three filters from now on. When I look at something that I'm involved in and I start feeling whatever it is, then I go back to these three filters, and is it feeding my business? Is it feeding me emotionally? And is it bringing income in my life? I mean, that's where I am right now. It's
Right.
got to hit one of the things. And if it's not, then it's not what I need to put my energy into. And so I kind of spent 2023, and that's that embrace that suck, because that is not fun, by the
Right.
way. Make yourself have to go through it. But I do think this is kind of my navigate moment. Like I had triggered that, and then I had to kind of sit in my own suck about it. But 2024, I keep saying it's 2024 carrot. I am having the best year. I'm having so much positivity.
That's
And
fantastic.
I don't feel like I'm throwing things up against a wall just to see what happens. I feel like I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't a one-time thing. It was multiple times of kind of having to come back around and address this. And so I'm just going to go ahead and say again to the author, if we totally gone off track with your book, I'm sorry, we weren't trying to, but we're trying to relate this to kind of things that we've experienced in our life. And
Well,
so
to that point, though, to shout out to Shirzad here, you're talking of the things we have talked about are like I said at the beginning, they're all in our brains.
Yeah.
They're all in our minds. And so you and I have talked about conflict we have created with the way we have processed arguably benign external stimuli.
Right.
And so there is a huge connection between your point about resolving conflict, managing conflict, and these things that create the conflict. And so I think that these are, one of the ways that I would think about it rather than saboteurs, I think a lot of these are conflict triggers.
Right.
What's going to trigger the conflict? And it's because I'm unhappy today because I haven't hyperachieved. I am ignoring you in this conversation because I am restless, and that then creates the conflict. And if we are the cause of our conflict, perhaps the solutions provided by some of the stuff in the PQ can resolve our conflict.
Right. Because if and I've said this 100 times, internal conflict skills have to be mastered first. You have to work. Oh, I know, master.
No, it's so much easier to solve your problems than mine.
Oh, you have no problems compared to mine. Yeah, I know. But if we take the mirror first, like you point at someone else with those three fingers pointing back, did you pay attention to those three fingers before you put the last one out? If we all take a minute to take the time to go through books like Positive Intelligence and assess ourselves and accept these results and say, let me see, how do I see this and this and this and this, and okay. And instead of saying, gosh, I'm a bad person because I have A, B, C, D, E,
Right.
you say, okay, I recognize that. These are patterns. These are things that have been built in my brain. How do I work with that pattern to not be a stumbling block, to not keep repeating behaviors that we don't want to repeat? And how do we do it so that we engage, like I said, this navigate. Like I really was frustrated, and that's the real F word in life, folks, frustrated. I was really frustrated with, kind of feeling like I had a lot of opportunity, but didn't really know which thing was going to be it. And there's a wonderful attorney here in Dallas. Her first name is Leslie. And I won't finish her last name because she doesn't know I'm going to do this. And I was having lunch with her and she's telling me about this nonprofit she was starting and all these cool things. And I just got so excited for her. And the first thing I said was, you know, what can I do to help you? And she immediately said, you are not doing anything to help me.
Wow.
And it was this gift of, she said, because you need to protect your energy.
Ooh.
Right? Right. And so if I weren't working on me already, and I told her I was working on me, I told her all this, and then I'm like, what can I do for you? How do I give away some more of my energy to things I really need, right? And she had the wherewithal to say no. And it was such a gift. And no is a gift in your life sometimes. And so that completely, I mean, I've gone back to that and gone back to that in my mind. As I'm looking at different things going, you know, is that really what, does that fit my 3 thing? It doesn't. Okay. And so instead of saying, hey, can I help you with your blah, 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 I say, how's it going? I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
And you're aligning with your values.
Right.
I think that the problem becomes you took all that time in 2023 to figure out what your values are.
Right.
And when you and I live in a world where I have not yet fully developed those values because I think many of us now when we're talking about values, we're also not talking about like love, truth, justice,
No,
love,
they're like morals. We're talking
not
about
morals.
yeah.
We're talking about values. And the thing about values is that many times they change based on where you are in life, what you're doing, what your circumstances are. And that is the figuring out what your values are now is critical before you then can figure out how to deal with your saboteurs and things like that. Because if you're still playing with Andy's rules from 10 years ago, you're playing with the rules Andy had when he was 25.
Right.
Andy just turned 36.
Oh, yeah, actually just turned 36. Your birthday
literally 4 days ago. Yeah, 4 days ago. Andy just literally turned 36. And so figuring out what the new values are for the new world and new life I'm in, that has to, you're doing that. And while you're doing that, the saboteurs are working on it. The hyperachiever, the restlessness, the hypervigilance, they're all working on that because they all want to get a piece of that value stuff. They want to get it, you want to align your values to make them happy. And we've been ignoring the judge the whole time, but he's always in charge.
Always in charge.
But that conflict of how do you realign your values without the saboteurs getting their hooks in them, but also really having to pass it through the saboteurs, because I also don't think that the saboteurs are necessarily bad because they're part of how we've learned to derive and develop satisfaction.
Right. It's how we built those synapses in our brains, how we built those connections. The beautiful thing is, and this is also in the book, is it talks about you can keep rebuilding your neurons. You can make those neural pathways new. That's why people can still learn how to walk after a stroke. Just set up a new pathway. It's fascinating how much our brain is capable of. We use so very, very little of it. So says science, and not Lynn, but so says science. And yet our brains and our internal conflicts can be the primary thing that keeps us from moving forward or keeps us from accomplishing what all we have the skills to do or the capacity for. I will tell another story on Andy, who I don't know if he even remembers this, but you'll like this story, don't worry.
And if not, we can edit it out, right?
Oh, maybe. So we are both members of the Dallas Bar Association. And so we see each other at bar events more than we ever get to see each other in social time. It's been much harder to try and line things up because, he has two young kids at home, and I've had teenagers home. And so we see each other at these bar events and we have this rundown of, hey, where are you? What are you doing? What's going on? How's your wife? How's this? And we have this conversation, or
Yeah.
we have a fun conversation like that. But this was an in-person conversation where we both had walked out of the BLO together, and we were walking to our cars after some event, and we're in the parking garage of the Dallas Bar Association. Okay, scene. And I was kind of berating and saying, I just didn't know if I was qualified. I just didn't know if I was smart enough. I always felt like I wasn't smart enough to do it. And you whipped out the word of you and the imposter syndrome, Lynn Nash. And you said, you are more than capable, and you're just as smart as everybody else. And you have to stop letting the imposter syndrome win. And I have heard your voice in the back of my head multiple times where, you didn't have to say that to me. You didn't. I mean, you didn't. And so
I meant every word, and you are too kind to bring it up.
do you even remember that? Do you remember being in the parking garage? Because it meant it was for me, right? So you probably said it and moved on, and it's okay.
I
But
remember being in that parking garage. I don't remember saying those things, but I'm so glad. I'm so
yes,
glad I remembered you remembered that, because
yes,
I mean it.
I needed it really badly. And so there is something about having the group of people in your life who are there to lift you up and to be your support system. If you are surrounded by people who are taking you down and trying to tell you what you can't do, you
Absolutely.
need a group. You are only the measure of the people you choose to spend your time with. I have incredible friends, as you all are learning, because I get them to come on here and talk. But right words at the right time. And so for me, that was a moment that really made a difference. And I've carried it with me, and that was a long time ago. But when we talked,
Yeah.
I shared with you a story about, as you were sharing with me, you just felt restless, going back to this term, and looking at different paths and really feeling unsure. And,
Yeah.
and I think I'll leave it there at unsure. And so I said, oh, my great grandmother Topsy always had this saying about the cream always rises to the top. And if you just thrash around too much, you're going to make butter. Right? You're not going to get to be the cream on the top. You're going to end up being that solid thing of butter. Now, we like butter. It's not like you don't like butter, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're trying to rise and be cream, you have to stop moving so much. And you came back to me a couple of times saying that had stuck with you.
Yes. So one, I listen when you talk because it means a lot. But two, the cream versus butter thing cut into the saboteur swirl, because that story I told about my semester being in exile, being marooned in New Haven, cut off from my past glories and unable to proceed to my new heights. I thought about that. I thought about that story when you said cream versus butter, because the whole time I was there, I was casting about for something. I was thrashing. I was emotionally thrashing. I was making emotional butter.
Yeah.
When all I had to do was wait.
Right.
And I have had episodes like that throughout my life, and especially a large chunk of the past 2 years. I have been in a butter developing mindset. And when you said that, that actually dovetailed with something also that a federal judge told me recently, that a step back is not a setback.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
And so when two powerful women in my life say something, it must be true. Usually that's my mom and my wife, but we'll take a federal judge and the famous Lynn Nash to tell me, and this also was probably a sign from the universe,
Right.
that a step back is not a setback, cream versus butter, that this was the moment to calculate values, to silence the saboteurs, calculate values, and move forward on a path that was consistent with the values. And so that has led me to a great deal. I don't have any answers, but it has led me to a great deal of calm, a little bit of conflict resolution, to be able to be in this value discernment moment, to handle the saboteurs and begin to think about what's next. I'll indulge your listeners and you one more time by saying I've told people this, but I finally, your point about the cream versus butter, also, not only did it speak to what the judge had told me that moment in New Haven, I got to Google it here. But for years, I have pondered this Soren Kierkegaard quote. Yeah, we're going there. Protestant theology,
Yeah.
Reformed thinker. I think he's Danish. I don't know. It's got
It's
two
a
A's.
whale of a name. Lot of vowels in there.
A lot of vowels, whale of a name, yeah. But Kierkegaard says, and this quote stuck with me, and I didn't really kind of get it, and then I got it and didn't understand. Like when the pandemic happened, I kind of got it, and then when some life events happened, I kind of got it. But when you said butter versus cream, so Kierkegaard says instinctively, as do the shipwrecked, he will look around for something for which to cling, and that tragic, ruthless glance, absolutely sincere, because it is a question of his salvation, will cause him to bring order into the chaos of his life. And this is the simple truth, that to live is to feel oneself lost. He who accepts it has already begun to find himself and to be on firm ground.
A lifelong learner.
Well,
a person who doesn't ever think they've solved the problem.
And to accept the fact that you can pause and reflect. You do not have to be restless and relentless and pushing and pushing and pushing. You don't have to keep making butter because you need to search for the cream.
And you can't be the cream if you're busy making butter.
Not at all.
Which is kind of crazy. It's such a simple thing, but right words at the right time. I think we all get them when we're surrounded by the people who, whether you want it to be God or the universe or whatever your calling is. My dad's a minister. Something fell in my lap, and I was like, I didn't even know this is going to happen. It's crazy. My mom, just her phrase is always, God provides.
Yeah.
And you've been provided for. And when you can get to a place where you can accept, wow, I'm going to speak for mine. I'm not in control. I am working from a place of, I feel like this is my path. I feel like this is my mission. I feel like this is my service. I know this is how I feel so unbelievably blessed to do the work that I do, to feel like I help people at the end of the day. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I don't get it all right all the time. I've just had a situation that I've been chewing on and chewing on and chewing on, because not because I feel like I failed, but I'm trying to figure out, if I were doing this again, if I did this, would this make a difference? Would this make a difference? And I've worked on it enough that it's time to put it away.
Yeah.
So it's okay to do that for a while. It's just can't stay there forever, because that kind of makes you crazy. Kaylee wouldn't say that. But the point is to say everything happens that you can learn from it. And when you talk about this internal conflicts, if you are curious, here is the book again, Positive Intelligence, and it's written by, you say it this time.
I think it's Shirzad Chamine.
Shirzad Chamine. I'll buy. I should have had it like read to me on Google or something, but it's really a fascinating piece of work. Some wonderful science in the back about how your brain is working and all the different process controls that are dead on. I've read them multiple different ways. If you're curious about the stuff, look it up. I'm so pleased that Andy turned me on to this book, and I'm so honored that you came on. As I told him, I said, you're the first lawyer to come on my podcast, and we're not talking about the law or
I love it.
Or ADR. We're talking about internal conflicts and working on ourselves, which is ever a work in progress, but that's not bad. So with that,
I just so appreciate being here, Lynn. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. And I'm glad you're in my life, and I'm glad you're my friend.
Me too.
I have some killer friends. I'm so grateful. So with that, I will tell you, you can find us on letstalkaboutconflict.com or Instagram with the same name. Send us a message. Let us know what you think. By the way, if the author reaches out to us, we're trying to do our best here, and in no way are we. Okay. And I do mean that in all empathy and earnesty. Okay. So with that, be in touch with us. We'd love to do this. You can follow us. Please follow us. And thanks for joining Andy and I as we talked about our own internal conflicts and our own work. And we will see you down the road.